All right, so hello everyone. My name is Jesse and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And before I introduce our speaker and topic today, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of you for joining in and a welcome back to the classroom. We know it's been a crazy 6 or so months, but it's so nice to have kids back live in the classroom, all socially distanced, all with masks. You guys rock, and it's nice to get to share some really cool explorers, scientists, conservationists, and amazing facilities from around the globe with you. So this month of September is all about ocean plastics. We've done, I think, 7 programs so far. We got 10 more to come, all on the topic of microplastics, ocean plastics, how you can help at home. To sort of take the edge off that, but that could be sort of a distressing topic. We wanted to have a really, really exciting presentation today with one of our biggest, longest lasting partners in Ripley's Aquarium of Canada. So this is the largest indoor aquarium in Canada. It has thousands of individual animals, hundreds of species, and we have done, I think, 40 plus programs with them over the last 2 years. I used to work there myself. It's an amazing facility. If you're in the Toronto area, be sure to check it out, and it is open right now too, which we'll get to later in the broadcast as well. But I wanted to pass it over to Janat. He is an educator there, and today we are going to do a live sea turtle feeding with Spot the sea turtle. So without further ado, I don't want to steal thunder. Janat, take us away, man. So excited to meet Spot.
All right, thank you. So hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Jesse, for that awesome introduction. So as many of you guys know, my name is Janat, and I'm an educator here at the aquarium. I also have my good friend Haley here. Haley is an aquarium biologist, or aquarist for short. And today, like Jesse said, we're going to be showing you how we actually feed our turtles and do the enrichment. Now, right now, I'm actually behind the scenes of our Dangerous Lagoon exhibit. So for those of you who've been to the aquarium before, you know the tank by that really cool underwater tunnel. And it has all these sharks and turtles and sawfish. And I can imagine it looks kind of different right now. And again, that's because we're behind the scenes. We're actually in an area called the acclimation pool. So this is an area where if we have any new animals, we'll actually let them hang out here for a bit before we let them out into the big tank. And that's so that they can get used to their new environment. We also have our scuba divers who actually go into the tank from this area. So there's stairs right there. They'll actually come down the stairs and go to the big tank. They actually go there several times a week to scrub and to clean. So that's where they come from. And if you actually look closely, you might notice a little small black gate that's holding this right now. That gate is usually up, and the animals can swim back and forth freely. But for the moment, we actually have it closed, and that's because we want to keep our turtle a little bit more entertained right here. Now, here at the aquarium, we actually have 2 green sea turtles. We have Spot, and like mentioned, this is our beautiful girl over here, Spot. She's very easy to tell apart because she has a little pink spot on her neck. So you can see that Haley's going to be pointing out. The other green sea turtle in this tank is called Chewy. Chewy gets her name because she loves to chew on everything, and given a chance, she will. If you ever get a chance to see Chewy and Spot together, Spot's slightly bigger than Chewy, so she's very easy to tell. Now, our turtles actually get fed several times a week. Sometimes they get fed over here in the acclimation pool, or sometimes they actually get fed out in the front of Dangerous Lagoon for our guests to see. When we feed our turtles, we do a little bit of enrichment, so it's a little something different. We give them a little environmental stimuli or a little task or puzzle, and they have to do something in order to get their food. So Spot has a target. That's her environmental stimuli. It's the yellow arrow that Haley was showing us. The Spot knows to actually come to this target to get her food. This form of training is also something known as positive reinforcement. So every time she comes to the target, she gets her food. So target training is actually very useful for all the animals in the aquarium. Our sharks here are target trained. As you can see, the turtle here is target trained. And our octopus is target trained as well. Now, target training is very beneficial because it lets the animal become more comfortable approaching a target and ultimately an aquarist. If we ever need to do any kind of vet checkup, or we need to do some feeding, or we want to move the animal, it lets them approach us without being stressed out. Now, let's find out what's on the menu today. So I believe we have some green leaf lettuce in this tank. We have some mackerel, bluefish, and some veggies. So I see some Brussels sprouts, sweet potatoes, and I want to say bell peppers. Bell peppers. So our turtles are actually omnivorous. That means they do eat meat and veggies. However, adult sea turtles are primarily herbivorous. That means they have a diet heavily based on vegetation. In the wild, sea turtles will probably eat seagrass, kelp, algae, seaweed. Here in the aquarium, it's hard for us to access that food, so we actually give them a lot of veggies and fish. It helps them get all their nutrients and proteins as well too, so we do supplement them with fish. Now, Spot over here, she does have some serrations on her jaw, so it's a little hard to see, but she has some serrations on her jaw to help her break down her food and grind it. So it lets her break down her lettuce a little bit easier. And in the wild, if they're breaking down her veggies like seagrass and kelp, it lets it break down easy to digest. Now, there are 7 species of sea turtles in the world. The largest sea turtle in the world is called the leatherback sea turtle, and they can get quite large. The largest sea turtle was weighed at over 1,500 pounds, so they can get quite heavy, and they can measure up to 7 feet long, so pretty big as well. Now, the second largest sea turtle species is the green sea turtle, so spot over here. They can grow anywhere between 3 to 4 feet long, and I believe the longest ever recorded was around 5 feet long with 500 pounds. So they can get quite big as well. So sea turtles can be found pretty much all over the world. They're found in over 140 different countries. They like to hang out in warmer waters, so subtropical or tropical areas. So you'll typically find them in the Caribbean, or the Indo-Pacific region, or even the South Americas. Now, sea turtles can actually live to around 80 years plus, and we believe that Spot and Chewy are around their 20s, so that makes them juvenile, so they still have a lot of growing to do. So now I have some fun facts about sea turtles, and the more you know about them, I think the cooler they get. One cool fact about sea turtles, especially the green sea turtles, is that they get their name from their fat in their body. So because the adults have a diet primarily based on vegetation, they actually their fat actually turns slightly green. So the more older they get, the greener the fat is. Juveniles are primarily carnivorous, so they do eat a lot of jellyfish, mollusks, and crustaceans. So ideally, as they get older, so their fat turns greener. Well, it's a little cool fun fact. And the cool thing is when you're seeing Spot eating, she's actually swallowing a lot of salt water. These animals live in the water, of course. So sea turtles, when they eat, they gulp a lot of water. So they actually have these specialized ducts that are located near their eye, and they cry salty tears. So to help them balance the salt in their body, they can actually cry out salty tears, and I think that's really unique for turtles. We actually often get asked what's the difference between a turtle and a tortoise, and I'm sure many of you guys have that question, and it's a really good question. So most tortoises live on land. They are usually longer lived than sea turtles. Another defining characteristic about tortoises is that they have really big shells. They're more thicker and rounder, almost dome shaped. But when you're looking at turtles, especially sea turtles, they have a flat shell. That actually helps them swim a lot faster in the water. Now, another question we often get is how do you tell the difference between a male and female sea turtle? And it's pretty easy. If you look at the turtle, usually you look for the tail. So females actually have a short tail. So if you kind of look at Spot's tail, it's very short. I know, Haley, thank you for trying your best. The tail actually doesn't go past the shell, so it's pretty small. For males, it's usually a lot longer. Males also have a slightly bigger shell compared to the females. And then the males will actually have longer claws on their front flippers. So you don't really see the claws on Spot's flippers, but the males will have longer claws. Now, I've been telling you that turtles are really cool and they have these really unique things. One of the most unique things about turtle is they do something called natal homing. And if you don't know what natal homing means, it's really easy. It just means that they actually go back to the place they were born in order to mate. Yeah. How they do this? No idea. We actually don't have any clue. Scientists think that they actually might be looking at chemical cues, so like taste and smell in the water, or they might be looking at navigational cues via the Earth's magnetic wave. So again, really, really cool. But we don't know too much about them in that sense. What we do know is that males typically go back every year to the same beach they were born on. Females will go back every 2 to 3 years, depending on the species, and they have to go back to the same beach they're born on. Now, sometimes they end up very far away from the beach they're born on. Sometimes their feeding grounds are actually a lot far away. So some turtles actually migrate over thousands of kilometers to get back to where they were. So it's a long trip. Now, once a male and a female have mated, the female will actually go onto shore to lay her eggs. What she'll do is she'll climb onto shore, she'll dig a nice little hole, and she'll lay about 100 eggs. And then once she's done, she'll just bury the eggs and then go back to the sea to live on her life. And then the hatchlings are actually left on their own. Now, this is one of the most dangerous parts of a turtle's life, is when they're actually hatched, because they have to find their way to the open water. It takes about 2 months for eggs to hatch, and once they hatch, they have to fight off scavengers and birds and crabs that are trying to eat them. And it's almost like a natural instinct for them to head to the open body of water. But once they actually get to the water, we don't know much about what happens. We know a lot about turtles when they're young, but once they hit that water, there's a really big gap until they're fully grown. So more research is being done to see how they actually grow, where they go, and what happens to them. Now, one cool thing about turtles is that depending on how warm their nest is, will actually produce male or female turtles. So if the nest is actually around warmer than 30 degrees, it will produce more females. So eggs that are in the middle of the nest or more well insulated will have females, and then nests that are lower than 30 degrees or like eggs that are around the edges will actually produce more males. So that's a cool little tricky fact. Um, Another interesting fact is that turtles actually breathe air. So for those of you who know what turtles are, they are reptiles. They do have to breathe air just like us. So it depends on how active they are, is how often they need to come up for air. A turtle that is very active and hunting and foraging actually has to come up for air every 5 minutes. But if a turtle is sleeping or resting, they actually use less oxygen and energy. That means that they can hold their breath for a few hours at a time. Really cool, right?
It's super cool. If you want, because you've been highlighting so many cool facts, we can dive in with questions, see what the kids are interested in, and then
Oh yeah, if you guys have questions, I'll feel free to ask me away. I love to talk.
so so many questions. So we've got 4 live groups. We had Miss Rose's class join us in San Antonio, so welcome into them. We'll be doing Q&A in just a minute with all the live groups. I just want to note as well for everyone on YouTube and Facebook, you guys have been awesome. We've got classes in California, we've got classes in Ontario, and many more places. So do share your questions on YouTube, Facebook. I'll take as many as I can. But what we're going to do to start is go to Miss Kump's class, joining us in Astoria in New York. So if you guys want to come in and ask a question, take us away.
Hi, Javier here wants to know, do sea turtles carry diseases and how can they get sick?
Oh, do they carry diseases and how do they get sick? Perfect. Yeah.
So do sea turtles carry diseases and how do they get sick?
Yeah.
That's a really good question, and I'll be quite frank, I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure that sea turtles do get sick. Our turtles here have definitely gotten sick before. One of the main signs to look for a sick animal is to look at their behavior. A lot of times, animals' behavior will change if they're not feeling well. One of the things that we look out for is feeding as well too. So sometimes the animals actually completely stop feeding. That's another sign to look out to see if they're unwell. And body condition. So some animals might get change in color. So they might get more pale because they're not getting that nutrients they get from their food. So yes, they definitely do get sick. Do they carry diseases? I'm sure they might have certain diseases. I won't be able to name them for you, but that's a really good question.
Yeah. Well, one thing that we can segue off that, Jeanette, is if an animal gets sick at the aquarium, what do you guys do with it? Oh, I asked the question, they ran away. There we go. Jeanette, you're back. Did you catch the question?
Yeah. So One of the immediate things we do is we try to isolate the animal. We want to have certain areas where the animal can rest without being stressed out, via the acclimation pool or different areas around the aquarium. We actually have a vet who comes into the aquarium to help us with our animals. So
Yeah.
our vet will contact our vet. She'll come in. She's well studied in animals and how to take care of them, and she actually gives us like a few steps and procedures to take. And depending on the action, we'll go forward or we'll continue treating them here at the aquarium.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. All right, we're going to go to Mr. Stevens in Colton, California, crossing across the entire United States in one fell swoop. So, Mr. Stevens, I know your camera's off, but we can bring you guys in for a question if you have one to share with us.
Yes, my student Cheyenne wants to know how easy are they to train?
Okay.
How easy are the turtles to train? I think they're relatively easy. You'd have to ask the aquarists who actually work with the animals, but with a lot of the animals, food is a really strong motivator. So it's just having a repetition. So if you feed the animals and having that specific routine or pattern, they're very easily able to pick up with it. Via the target, we fed Chewy the Spot actually. We fed Spot on front of a target. She associated food and the target together. So now she kind of knows that every time the target's in the water, she'll get fed. So it does take some time, but it's not that difficult.
Yeah. Fantastic. One of the things that we can do too is highlight to all our students that are watching live or on YouTube. We've done some sessions where they highlight how they train some of the sharks. So if you want to see like a cool, they got like Superman and Batman banners on the end of sticks, and they train the sharks to come up to that to eat. So you can check out some of our other broadcasts on our YouTube channel. Speaking of YouTube, before we go to Fox Creek School for a question in a minute, Ms. Vallejo's class, joining us also in California, they wanted to know how the turtles swim around. We've got young kids in California. How do they swim around, Matt?
How do the turtles swim around? Well,
Yeah.
for starters, Spot is very lazy, so she actually doesn't swim around too much. Spot loves to spend her time just floating around or taking a nap. But the turtles have these really cool front flippers, and they're pretty how do I say it? Not aerodynamic, but they're pretty hydrodynamic. That's the word. So their bodies are very smooth. It helps them swim. If they had a big shell, almost like a tortoise, they wouldn't be very fast in the water. But these guys have that flatter, curved shell that lets them swim. They use their flippers to move around. But like I said, Spot over here is our lady turtle. She just likes to hang out near the top of the water. She likes to take a nap. Now, if you've ever been to the aquarium and you do see a turtle swimming around, that's Chewy. Chewy loves to zip around. You'll see her moving her flippers, so that waving motion that Spot's kind of doing right now. And she's always zooming around, exploring, seeing what's in her way.
Nice. Great question, guys. All right, I'm going to bring up Mr. Coster's grade 4 class. They have a cool question on YouTube, which is how long do sea turtles live, Jeanette?
How long do sea turtles live? So, sea turtles can live around 80 years, depending on the species. Some of them can go a little bit longer than that. Like I mentioned before, our sea turtles are around their 20s. I want to say mid-20s, so they're still quite young, considered to be juveniles.
Okay. Perfect. Another great note for everyone who's tuning in, one of our longest standing partners too is the Turtle Hospital in Marathon, Florida. So if you want to see turtles at a hospital where they are in the wild, check out the Turtle Hospital. Amazing organization, great charity as well. Yeah, just a cool follow-up to this. Ooh, Spot's up close to the camera. So I'll bring in the Miss Hinton's class. Fox Creek.
Hi.
Hi.
We are learning about seasons, and we want to know, is there a certain season that the turtles lay eggs in?
Is there a certain season that the turtles lay eggs in? So, because these turtles spend most of their times in warmer climate areas, so typically around the equator, they don't have exact seasons like us. I would say that the turtles love to lay their eggs around in warmer temperatures. So, especially in areas like the Caribbean, in the Pacific, or even the South Americas, they don't have a winter like us we do. So they're pretty lucky in that sense. If I were to tell you an exact time they do lay their eggs, they tend to lay their eggs around a local summertime. So in the northern hemisphere, so maybe North America up, they lay their eggs around May to August, sometimes in November to February for the southern hemisphere.
Fantastic. Thanks, guys. Great questions coming in. All right, I'm going to go to Gross's class in San Antonio, Texas. We love San Antonio. So many classes there. So Miss Gross, if you have a question for us, take us away.
We do. We have a couple questions. First, thank you for inviting us to come see this. We absolutely love your adventures. We have two questions. How do the turtles travel in the wild? Like, do they travel in packs? Do they travel together? Or are they separate? And the other thing is, you said they were carnivores. What is the largest thing they eat?
Ooh, that's a really good question. So, turtles are actually pretty solitary animals. They normally tend to spend their time by themselves. Only during mating season is when they actually have to come together. So, you normally won't see flocks of turtles. They're not like stingrays that hang out in large groups. And for the carnivore question, well, when they're adults, they primarily eat vegetation. So, it's more when they're juveniles. And I believe the largest thing they'd probably eat would be probably squid. They do eat jellyfish and some shellfish, so like crabs and mussels. But for the largest prey they would eat, probably I'd say squid.
Yeah.
Or an octopus if they had the chance.
Awesome. All right. Thanks.
Love the
for that.
questions, guys.
Oh yeah, so many questions, and there's more than I can possibly answer on the YouTube chat. Like it's astonishing even to try and keep up with it. So I'm going to pass along a few more from YouTube, and then we'll do a whole other round with all the live classes. First, all the way in India, we got a Cash joining us, and I love this question. Why do sea turtles lay their eggs on shore and not deep in the sea?
Okay, that's a really good question. So the eggs are actually quite porous, so they do need to breathe air. So the eggs are thin enough where they actually get their oxygen from the air. So if they were to actually lay their eggs in the water, theoretically the eggs would drown. So they're not fish. They don't lay their eggs in the water like fish do because the fish's eggs are able to absorb oxygen from the water. So that is why they actually have to come on the land. They're like they are reptiles, so just like any other reptiles, they do have to lay their eggs on dry ground.
Yeah, you see this in sea snakes as well, marine iguanas, reptiles that happen to go to the sea still live on land, and reptiles that live in the sea do not mention that they breathe air. So any reptile that you see that's in the water, any mammal that you see that's in the water, like whales or sea lions, they still have to breathe air. They evolved on land and then just go back to the water, and so they don't have gills to take in oxygen from the water like fish do. Great questions, guys. All right, Ms. Ross's class, I love this question. Student in class, how often do you feed them and how much do they eat? How voracious are the turtles, Jeanette?
So they eat twice a day. They eat several times a week, like every day. So they have to eat twice a week, every single day. And they actually eat a certain percent of their body weight. So they roughly eat like 3 pounds worth of food. So that's, again, usually a mix of like some vegetables and fish. And that really depends. We do fasted turtles every once in a while. So fasting is really important so that we can let the animals digest their food, because we don't obviously want to feed them every single time and have them overweight. So we do let the animals fast every once in a while.
Great job. Awesome. All right, let's go back to Ms. Cumm's class. We'll go back to New York, bring you guys into the broadcast. If you have another question for us, go for it.
All right, Ellen wants to know how do you track sea turtles when they're older, especially to see if they're endangered or if they're getting sick in the wild? How do you track them?
Could you repeat the question, Jesse? Sorry.
Oh, sure. No, I'll bring back Ms. Cumm's group. There you go. Sorry, could you repeat that for us really quick?
Sure. Emma wants to know how you track sea turtles in the wild. How do you get like a count of them to see if the sea turtle population is healthy or if they're sick or endangered?
Yeah, so are they endangered, Jeanette? How do they catch sea turtles in the wild? Do people catch sea turtles in the wild? And one of the questions that's a great segue off this that we often get is, how did you guys get your turtles at the aquarium?
All right, so in the wild, people do catch the sea turtles for a number of reasons. The good reason is we want to track them. Sea turtles are either endangered or critically endangered. Almost all 7 species are. So we do track their movements. Like I said, there is a big gap in what happens to them when they're born to once they get to this size. So what happens is that a lot of people try to put GPS trackers on them to see what they do, where they spend their time. And like I said, there's not that much information published on them. But as technology evolves, as we learn more about these beautiful animals, the more things that we're learning about where they are and where they're spending time. They are caught in certain parts of the world to be eaten. So unfortunately, they are endangered, and that's because they're either caught for their meat or their eggs, and sometimes their skin and shells are used for jewelry and clothing. So that's something that's also affecting our turtle populations. Another horrible thing that's happened to them is something called bycatch. So this is really big fishery that pretty much want to go catch certain types of fish for seafood. And what they do is they use this really big net to kind of drag along and catch the fish. Unfortunately, turtles, whales, sharks, all these animals end up getting caught, and they do end up drowning. So one of the things that happens is the turtles do end up getting caught in that. It's referred to as bycatch because they weren't the intentional catch. So that's also affecting our turtles. But there's a lot of good out of it. We're trying to make a difference here. There's a lot of things we can do, and I'll definitely talk about that in a second. But we can always look at certain companies like Oceanwise and Sea Choice. They tell you where you can get actually seafood that's sustainably caught and farmed, that's not affecting animals in their habitat. So that's a really good question, and I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, fantastic. We're definitely going to cover some of the ways that you guys at home can help sea turtles. And while Janat's answering the next question, I'll bring up the Oceanwise Sustainable Seafood link so you guys can all have that at home and in the broadcast here to learn more about how you can pick more sustainable choices next time you're at a fish market or a grocery store. All right, with that, let's go back to Mr. Stevens' class, joining us in California. You guys have a second question? Take us away.
Yes, we do. So my student Betsy wants to know, do they have teeth? And then Evan wants to know, can they remove their shell or climb out of their shell?
Cool. Great.
So I'll answer the shell question first. So they cannot actually come out of their shell. So they do shed parts of their shell. So it's called a scoop. These little diamond-shaped designs on them. So when Spot comes by, I'll try to show it out. But they do get itchy. Sometimes they do shed parts of the shell. So they can't come out of it. They're not like land turtles where they can kind of retract into their shells. What you see is pretty much what you get. And do they have teeth? So our turtles don't have teeth. They don't really need teeth to bite down. They're not eating fleshy stuff. They do have kind of serrated edges, as I mentioned earlier, and that's to kind of help them grind down the vegetation they'll be eating. That just helps them make it digest their food a lot easier.
Okay. Excellent question, guys. I'm going to take a question from Mr. Hancock, joining us from Georgetown, Ontario. So he wanted to know, are the turtles there being rescued? Are they going to be re-released into the wild, or are they there permanently at the aquarium?
That's a really good question. So these turtles are rescued animals. We did get them donated to us by a university out on the East Coast, Dalhousie to be exact. And before that, I believe they were rescued from a turtle farm. So turtle farms are this very scary, sad thing where they actually raise the turtles to be killed for their meat and for their eggs. So luckily, Spot and Chewy were rescued, and they went to the East Coast in Dalhousie, and then they were given to us. Unfortunately, these turtles won't be released into the wild. They've been in the system of like aquariums and aquaria for all their lives, so they wouldn't do too well in the wild. But here, they're able to live out their lives. They get fed all the time. They have a whole bunch of friends in here, so they'll live out their time here happy and well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jeanette. All right, so I'm going to be charging my mouse for a second because it inexplicably ran out of batteries. So I'm going to take a quick question from YouTube while we're waiting for that to charge so I can bring in our other live classes. So Fox, Creek, and Miss Gross's class, just hold tight for a second. A question that we get all the time, sort of generically about the aquarium from Miss DeCoster's classes: do the sharks in the aquarium eat the smaller fish, Jeanette?
Do the sharks eat the fish? Actually, no. So we feed all the animals here really, really well. So the sharks actually get fed 3 times a week. When we feed the sharks, we actually fillet the animals. So we cut the head and tails off. We take the bones out. So they're really getting the juicy parts of the fish. The sharks are actually very lazy here. They'd rather wait till we actually hand feed them. Well, we use a pole, but they'd rather wait till we actually feed them with a pole instead of chasing the fish around here. As you can see, there's a lot of small fish. They're not very meaty. They're very bony. The sharks would actually spend a lot more energy chasing these fish in here, that when they eat it, they're not getting anything back. And so they just like to hang around and swim around until they get fed.
Awesome. All right. One of the ways I like to think about it is that, you know, I had lunch before I started this broadcast. And so when I walk outside and I see a squirrel, I have no inclination to chase it down to try and eat it because I've had a full lunch. I'm all good. So hopefully that's the same wherever you guys are. And you had a nice lunch and a litterless lunch too. I'm going to bring back in Fox Creek School. So you guys want to come in?
Hi. We are wondering how long the baby turtles stay with their mom.
That's a really good question. So, I mentioned this earlier. So turtles, when they lay their eggs, the female will go onto the shore, dig a nest, and lay the eggs, and then the hatchlings are on their own. So the female actually goes back out to sea, and 2 months after the eggs hatch, the hatchlings go out into the water. It's one of their natural instincts to head for the first open body of water they see, and once they're there, they're on their own. Like I said, we don't know what happens from that stage of their life to when they get to full-blown adults, but what we do know is that there is actually no maternal or paternal care. They actually fend for themselves.
Yeah. One of the things that as mammals we're used to is this idea of mothers taking care of their young, or both parents taking care of their young. And that's true in mammals and a lot of birds, but most animals in the world just leave their young to their devices. They have a lot of babies in the hopes that some of them will survive, and they let them swim or fly or walk and hope for the best. So great question. We always get that with turtles, and it's really neat. One thing I'll try and find is a YouTube link where you can see baby turtles make the rush to the ocean and all the predators that try and get them. It's one of the most epic moments in all of the natural world. So great question, guys. All right, I'm going to bring back in Miss Gross. Do you have another question for us? Go for it. Oh, Miss Gross, you're muted. Sorry, you need to demute your mic. There you go. You guys can all leave your mics demuted. Perfect.
Oh my goodness, I tell my class that all the time, and I did it myself. How can you tell a turtle's age?
How can we tell a turtle's age? That's a really good question, and I think I actually might have to pull in Haley for that question. I know that a lot of the aquatic animals, it's kind of hard to tell because a lot of the times the age is kind of due to their size. So for sharks, I know this for sure. To tell the age of a shark is to look at its size.
The rings of the scoot and the
Ooh. So I mentioned this word earlier, but it's called the scoot. So if you can see on Spot's shell, you have those little rings or diamond shapes. Each of them have roughly 13. So every turtle will have a 13 little patterns of circles around them. So apparently to tell their age is to look at the rings on the scoots. And that's how you tell them. I guess it's kind of like a tree. So if you count the rings on a tree, same thing with the turtles.
I'm so glad we brought up the scoots. That's super cool. I've never actually heard that with regards to aging turtles. One of the easiest ways is to look at size. So Spot has grown tremendously since I left the aquarium in 2016. It's gotten much, much bigger. The bigger the turtle, typically the older it is. But with the scoots, and this is something we covered with the Toronto Zoo, which is super cool. For anyone interested in Indigenous history or culture, if you look at the turtle shell, they've got the 13 scoots in the middle and 28 around the outside ring. And now if you multiply those by each other, you almost get an entire year. So you can use a turtle shell really, really well as a calendar. It's one of the most easy ways of tallying days and months in the year. You know, I know we have 12 months and a little more than 30 days most of the time, but if you use 13 with the 28, it gets you very, very close. So a super cool way to use turtles for even more cool stuff. Oh, Spot's coming up to say hi to us. I'll bring her up for a minute. This has been great. So what I want to do now, Jeanette, you mentioned some cool resources and ways kids at home can help protect turtles. So if we're a kid in Texas and Alberta and California, New York, and around the world on YouTube, what can we do at home to help protect sea turtles?
So I would say two things. One, educate ourselves. So the fact that you guys are here tuning in, that's amazing. Spread the knowledge. So a lot of things we learn, we want to tell everyone else because we want to make sure that we help protect not only our ocean friends, but everyone around the world. So just spreading the word and learning and going out of your way to do that is amazing. Number two, one of the main threats to turtles is plastic pollution. So a lot of plastic actually ends up in our oceans. I'm sure we all know this, but plastic takes a really long time to break down. So somehow, some way, it does find its way into the ocean. It's estimated that almost at least half of all the existing sea turtles in the world have eaten plastic at least once. And that's a very sad fact. So one thing we can do in our part is to actually reduce our plastic use. A lot of one-time use plastics we can eliminate from our daily lives. For example, if we go shopping, it's very easy to bring a tote bag instead of using a plastic bag at a grocery store. A lot of plastic bags that end up in the oceans, turtles actually mistake them for jellyfish. Yep. So we'd also want to cut down on our plastic use. Something simple as straws. So we use straws in our everyday lives, but having a metal straw or a bamboo straw, something that's more reusable, would actually cut down on our plastic waste that actually ends up in the ocean. So that's a really good way to help out our turtles.
Yeah. Fantastic. One thing that's really nice about a lot of the things, the threats facing turtles, is that there's really easy actions we can do at home, in our businesses, in our schools that can make a real lasting difference. So Jeanette talked about sustainable seafood earlier in the presentation. I'll link this in an email to all the groups that have registered as well, but for anyone who's just tuning in off the cuff, seafood.ocean.org, sustainable seafood, that's ocean-wise. They're a big partner of ours as well. They have some really amazing resources on how you can shop sustainably, and that will help prevent bycatch of things like green sea turtles. And then secondly is plastics. So plastics is our whole month-long theme, all September long. Ocean-wise, again, has some great resources there. We've got a story map for it at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, so tons of cool resources that you guys can do. We'd love to see you guys as classrooms share with us on Twitter, just via email, and highlighting some of the things you're doing to help protect turtles when we're done. But yeah, this has been really, really great. Jeanette, before we wrap up, is there any last message you'd like to share about turtles? And then I'm going to walk through a little bit of a campaign we're doing in September before we end. But any last message about turtles?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everyone tuning in loves turtles just as much as me. And I want to say, like, thank you guys for like watching, and it's amazing to know that you guys are so interested and so knowledgeable. All the questions have been super amazing, and like we said earlier, there's so many things we could do on our behalf to help save the turtles. So, thank you guys for like doing your best, and just honestly, thank you for watching.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeanette. That was awesome. Before we wrap up, I want to bring up one more thing that we're doing all September long. I think a lot of the classes here have already registered for this, but backyard bio. Not all of us have the chance to necessarily see a sea turtle in the wild, and that is okay. They are super cool, and I hope you all get a chance to in your life. But wherever you're joining from, there's amazing wildlife near you, and so all September long, we're encouraging you to get out with your class, either socially distanced or individually at home. Spend just 10 minutes and explore and identify the species that live near you. We'd love to see that on Twitter, on our iNaturals page, together with Classroom Connections. The more we can highlight amazing wildlife around the world, the more we'll be inspired to protect it. So hope you guys get a chance to do that. We'd love to see what you guys have to pick. And now, before we wrap up, I'm going to bring everyone back in the broadcast with Mr. Stevens, Miss Kump, and the Fox Preschool. Awesome. We love turtles too. Jeanette, that was awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thank you for being